Good evening and welcome to the September 27th regular meeting of the Town Council. If you'd kindly rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. A few announcements here. First, on behalf of the Merrimack Town Council, we would like to extend our deepest sympathies to the family and friends of Marty Carrier, who passed away on Sunday, September 23rd at the age of 79. Marty was greatly involved at the state and local level, to include serving as call lieutenant and call deputy chief of the Merrimack Fire Department, totaling nearly 34 years. He also served as a water commissioner with the Merrimack Village District for 11 years, as a member of the South Fire Station Building Advisory Committee, and as well as a longtime board member of the National Volunteer Fire Council and the New Hampshire Association of Fire Chiefs. Marty was valued and respected, and his volunteer service and contributions will never be forgotten. And if you'll join me for a moment of silence, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. The New Hampshire Department of Transportation will hold a public hearing to discuss the proposed improvements to the F.E. Everett Turnpike on Wednesday, October 3rd at 7 p.m. at the Merrimack High School located at 38 McKelwin Street. This project will widen the F.E. Everett Turnpike to improve traffic operations and safety, comprised of 3 segments. Segment 1, from the vicinity of Exit 8 in Nashua northerly to the vicinity of Exit 10 in Merrimack. Segment 2, from the vicinity of Exit 11 in Merrimack northerly to the southern limit of the Bedford Toll Plaza. And segment 3, from the northern limit of the Bedford Toll Plaza northerly through the I-293 exchange. This project is tentatively scheduled for advertising for bids December 15th, 2020. Let me see. Okay, Wednesday, October 10th, in the James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School All-Purpose Room, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services PFAS Public Information Meeting will be held at 6:30 p.m. Thursday, October 11th, and Thursday, October 25th, both at 7 p.m. here in the Matthew Thornton Room, are regular meetings of the Town Council. Eileen, do you have anything?
Yes, I announced this last week also, but I think it's important to remind people that once again, Eversource is offering a free Freon Day event at the transfer station on Saturday, October 13th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Residents can bring their Freon-based appliances to the transfer station, and the normal fee for disposal will be covered by Eversource. It's very expensive to dispose of Freon-based products. Freon appliances include refrigerators, freezers, dehumidifiers, and room air conditioners. Thank you.
Should have done that last year. It cost me $45, I think, so. All right, is there any other announcements? All right, PFAS update. Bill, do you have?
Just a couple of things. I serve on the subcommittee regarding land conservation projects on the Drinking Water and Groundwater Commission. We met on Wednesday. we met Tuesday at Department of Environmental Services, and we've recommended approval for close to $3 million of grants to support land conservation projects for source water protection throughout the state of New Hampshire. While Merrimack was not a part of the process, one of the things that I had talked about during some of our deliberations was Merrimack's commitment to quote-unquote exploration and looking for lands within our own town to develop our own new sources of drinking water and source water protection, specifically the parcel that we approved, I think, a couple of years ago on the parcel off of Clara Drive. I think is a great example, and that was one of the issues that I had cited at the meeting. The full commission is scheduled to meet on Monday, so I will be able to report back on that. And I hope I'm not stealing Councilor Healy or Councilor Harrington's thunder, but we had a bill signing here with Governor Sununu signing in House Bill 1101, which, amongst all other things, provided specific criteria for air emissions and instructs the Department of Environmental Services to come up with a drinking water standard as it relates to PFCs. So I was really happy to be a part of it. I know I'm not going to it's not going to speak for Councilor Harrington or Councilor Healy, but want to point out that we had written a letter to our legislative delegation asking them to come up with a bill for specific air emission standards, and they were able to come through and be able to get legislation passed to address that particular issue. I know Councilor Healy had, I'd seen some email traffic that DES is hopefully going to have rules in place by January 1st. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so that's exciting in and of itself. I mean, here it is, it's September 27th, and by January 1st, 2019, we're going to have something in place, which I think is really exciting. So other than that, that's really all I have to report on. I know Peter and I and the Citizens for Clean Water, the action group, we've not met. I think it's anticipated that we will be meeting in the month of October. So hopefully we'll have something to report back at the second meeting in October.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Nope. Highway garage project update. Do you have anything, Paul? Would you like to?
Yes. The garage is progressing. Today, they were roofing the office space, and once the office space is roofed and the windows are going to be arriving shortly, the doors are actually on site. We're laying some flooring in the maintenance bay area. Once that's in, next week, they're going to be starting to run the mechanical, electrical, all the wiring. So we're on target for middle of November, early middle of November. I'm trying to push November 1st, but I think we're going to be in the middle of November. We'll be able to get into our new building, and it'll be completed. So we also got some good news about the current building that we're in. It looks like that we will be able to match the two buildings with siding and take care of some of the needs in the old building to match, so it's going to look like a complex and not like, oh, there's a building and there's a building. So we did get some good news Wednesday. So
Very good. Thanks, Paul. That's the first time you admitted to mid-November, because he does. It's always November 1st. So I know it. Next is comments from the press and public. If you'd like to address the council about agenda items, you can feel free to step to the mic or use the table right here in front. Hi, Lorraine. How are you? Make sure the lights burn.
Hi.
Yes.
A couple of comments. All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm dead tired.
Just keep it close to you.
Closer? Here. Okay, I'm sorry. I brought you a packet from the subcommittee hearing in Washington yesterday, the first Senate committee meeting ever on, the title was The Federal Role in the Toxic PFAS Chemical Crisis, which sounds really extreme. I was very puzzled when I saw that language because, you know, everything is kind of understated. Anyways, it was reassuring that there was this, this panel. And I went to Washington with people from Michigan, Colorado, Andrea Amico from Pease, Catherine Hodge and myself went, and a couple of folks from Western Mass. We've been working together on the coalition across the country and how to engage Senate in the needs of each impacted community, because as you know, we're all different. There's military impacted and industrial. That's a little bit of a sticky thing in Washington, which is what I found out. So while we were there, we engaged, we met with our Senate delegation, we went with Senator Hassan's whole team, we met with Senator Shaheen's whole team of leads that they have in environment and military and all those categories of government. It was fascinating to see how it works there. If anybody ever has a chance to do that, wow, it really gives a lot of insight. Because as we know, we've been focusing on state efforts and what we need in Merrimack. So that's part of it. So federally, I'm going to give you this packet, and you can share it or copy it. And you can, if you watched the video, it is on the site. And I don't know what they printed on the site, but this packet was there. And you can have this and read it. That way, anything you need as a resource at any point, you can see what they're doing specifically. So I'm going to leave that for you. I will say that Linda Birnbaum is the director of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences and National Toxicology Program. What a title. So she was asked by this committee to come so they could ask her questions and she could prepare a statement, because I noticed in the meeting from the last minute you were discussing ATSDR and what their role is. So she does not work for ATSDR, but she is the person in the country, maybe in the world, one of the top scientists in this area. So there were questions for her afterwards. That isn't in this packet, but it is on their video link. Very, very informative. Just a brilliant woman. Pete Gravatt from the EPA came and spoke, and I have to say, he's a lovely man. He's very, we met him, some of us, in Exeter. In Exeter, we heard language about what they were going to do and, what they're working on. It was very open. It was very welcoming. It was very collaborative. What he said yesterday in testimony that's in here that I was not surprised by is it sounds like the EPA at this point is going to take a different stand, which means it's pushed back to the states. So for New Hampshire, it leaves us in the same position that we've been in. He made a statement that you can read it and see what you think, but hearing it, I take from this that they have no intentions of changing that 70 parts per trillion limit. It didn't shock me, and focused on, testing. Linda Birnbaum made an interesting comment in her testimony, and she talked about cognitive and neurological challenges and associations, and she said, we can't test our way out of it. So that was an interesting little issue that's the ongoing. We have remediation and cleanup, which I think we're doing a pretty good job overall, not as quick as people would want, but they're testing and they're being real good about giving information. Now they're posting data, and that's great. But there's this tension between health impacts, lack of human study, if you will, and the role of the EPA. So one of the things that was said that we have to keep in mind, engaging with DES, that I hope they heard it as I did, is what was stated publicly by the EPA was the way the ATSDR does their science, I believe was the sentence, is not the way they do their science. That was very troubling, because the ATSD, you'll read it here. Yeah, I saw your face. So the ATSDR, as we know, put out this report that they're looking at reviewing health. So for me, MCL should be based on toxicology and health. So the EPA is clearly taking a very bold stand here, because they haven't said much about it, and this is the first I've heard them publicly state that the ATSDR does their science differently than the EPA. That bothered me, because health research is what needs to guide our laws. We need to be protected. So that was troubling. So I will leave you that. I will also leave you, I don't know if I mentioned this or gave this to you. You were talking at the last meeting about what was going on with the ATSDR, and I read the minutes just today. And there was discussion about whether we were included and whether we're getting attention. So I just want to clarify that, is that the PEAS study and the Newberg study, the funds are under the Department of Defense. And there was talk last year about including industrial communities in the data there and possibly having one or two included. That was definitely being talked about right about last October. It has not been considered since at least April. We are not on any consideration for any study other than documentations of support, which basically take our exposure data from DES and somehow magically put it into fact sheets that say what you can expect based on the exposure that we believe you've had. Sorry, I'm very tired. So what that means is what? What are they going to say? We don't really know. So that's something that puzzles me. So this is a letter from our congressional delegation, and this is what they wrote to ATSDR when they asked for our support. They asked for, it's very responsible, they asked to send us a community assistance panel, which is something that they have had in PEAS for several years. They asked for a more in-depth evaluation of community exposure, including biological monitoring of community members and the assessment of adverse health outcomes and health trends. So it's a very sensible letter, and I have to say, in talking with all their staff, I've engaged with their staff here in New Hampshire over the summer and on. The Washington crew, wow, I was really proud of them. And what I saw is in Senate committee, which they came to, they have respect, or those two ladies that I just know, hey, how are you? You're on the news. and that's about it. I try to not get too political in my life because it's a little too, I don't like conflict. So basically, I was very, very proud. They were sensible. They stood for New Hampshire. They were responsible. They were informed, and they had the respect of their colleagues. They asked excellent questions and were very well represented. I was very pleased because there's a lot of states that need Senate engagement and they don't have it. Their Senate is not really informed and they're trying to inform them. And as you know, in the early stages of this, we all are trying to get our heads around it. So somehow the messaging or needs are not clarified. So I will give you this letter. And if anybody wants contact information, if you don't have it, for ATSDR in Boston, you're talking maybe about following up. If you'd like to talk with me at some point about what the process was from September on of last year, when my engagement with the ATSDR, I'd be glad to discuss that at another time. And I have some thoughts about how you might be able to help and, things along those lines. So I think that's it.
Thanks, Lori.
Okay.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, this is a quick one. Just wanted to give you guys the heads up that Merrimack Citizens for Clean Waters has had the opportunity to access the movie The Devil We Know, which is an investigative documentary about a small town, Parkersburg, West Virginia, that had a significant amount of contamination from DuPont that was known to DuPont, and a lawsuit that ensued thereafter. There are a lot of similarities to the exposure here and the contamination of public drinking water. And we've made contact with Merrimack High School, and they're going to open the Little Theater for us on Friday evening, October 12th at 7 p.m. We'll send out emails and stuff. It just finally got approved yesterday, so I thought we'd get it on the record for the community, public. And of course, you'll all be invited as well. But just wanted to, if there's anything that we can do to sort of communicate that in the community, it would be a great opportunity to have the community come together, and especially since the DES discussion is, I think, 2 days prior, people might have some questions, or it might be a good place to have, local leaders and water people and all of us in one place. So that's it. Thank you.
Would you do me a favor? I need to state your name and address
Sure.
for the record.
Nancy Murphy, 20
Thank
Brenda
you,
Lane.
Nancy. I appreciate it. Is there anybody further who would like to address the council? Seeing none. There's no recognitions, resignations, or retirements. Move on to appointments. First item under appointments is the town Gage Perry's here to speak to us about their annual review, and the agenda is to highlight the commission's significant actions, current projects, anticipated actions, and to raise any concerns the council should know about or could act upon. Evening, Gage. Yes. Oh, do you want me to do that now first? Oh, yeah, no, I can. I was going to put it here, but that'll be good.
That's okay.
Gage, if you don't mind, just give me a couple minutes.
Take a minute.
I was going to do it before Comcast, before the cable piece. What I'd like is, I didn't know was Matt going to be here this evening for that as well, or just Kim? Okay. What I'd like to do without objection is move item number 3 under new business forward. The council consider the acceptance and expenditure of a donation of a commemorative bench with an estimated value of approximately $571.33, approximately, to the Parks and Rec Department to be placed near the waterfront at Wasserman Park pursuant to RSA 31:95E and Charter Article 8, Section 15. And Kim Sherman is here to make that presentation to us. Hi, Kim.
Hi, nice to meet you. Kim Sherman. I live at 3 Royal Court in Merrimack. So Matt gave you a proposal. Would you like me just to give you my?
If you'd like to
thought?
speak to it, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure.
And then-
So I live in an area of town where I can walk to Wasserman Park. And so for the last 20 years, that's what we've done every day. And I would just like to donate a bench and a sitting area that overlooks the lake, because 1, there isn't one, and 2, that's a place we enjoy every day.
For his birthday, you said?
Well, yeah, but it's on TV, so.
Does he watch
So the
this?
whole, well, sometimes.
I'm
Anyway,
I'm
so.
really sorry. Oh, my gosh.
It's fine, it's
Oh,
fine.
jeez.
So my husband turns 50 next year,
Oh.
and I just thought that would be a great surprise for
I
him.
feel like a spoiler now. I'm really sorry.
Thank you.
What's his birthday?
I'm sorry.
When's his birthday?
His birthday is on Halloween.
There
Okay.
you go.
Yeah,
I turned February 1st, so I feel his pain.
okay.
All right, does anybody have any questions of Kim
Yeah.
at this point? Peter?
Kim, I just know that we talked last time you were here. It's a great idea, but did Matt give you any idea where exactly or anything like that?
Matt and I walked down there and we took pictures of the actual spot. I don't know if he sent you along
He has a diagram.
this.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't look at it.
Okay, and so there's this with the red circled area, but then he actually took some pictures of the view and said that he would forward those on. If he didn't, I apologize. I don't even have them.
Okay,
Oh, there you go. There you go.
got it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Any questions?
No?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the town council accept the donation of a commemorative bench from Kimberly Sherman on behalf of her husband's birthday to Osmond Park overlooking the water not to exceed $575 in total cost, and furthermore, that the town manager or her proxy be authorized to sign whatever documents are necessary to perfect the transaction.
Second.
Motion by Bill Boyd, seconded by Nancy. Any further discussion on your motion, Bill?
Very quickly, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Wasserman Park is one of our crown jewels. We're very proud of what we've done here in Merrimack to improve not just the aesthetics there, but to improve the amenities, to improve the quality of life down there. So your bench is going to bring a lot of enjoyment to people that like to go down there at dusk, whether it be watching loons or watching,
Yeah.
birds fly around or the bats eating mosquitoes, whatever it is. It's a great location. And
Yes, it is.
I do want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill. Any further discussion? Need a vote? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained. 700. Thank you, Kim,
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for supporting the Parkinson's Ride.
and happy birthday. Oh, gosh. I know, I can't believe I did it, but Tom did point out it's been noted publicly as well, so I suppose I'm safe. All right, now, Gage, I apologize and thank you for your patience.
Mr. Chair, you need a motion to take it off the table.
Oh, did we table it?
Yes.
Move to take off the table.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor of the tabling motion, say aye.
Aye.
Or the untabling motion? All those opposed, abstained. 700. Thank you, Gage. I appreciate it.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Gage Perry. I'm the chairman of the Conservation Commission here in Merrimack. This is a little different schedule for us this year. Normally, we do this in January, late January, so this is twice now and within the year, so this is going to be a little bit more brief than normal, which is fine. So the Conservation Commission was, by town charter, was created in 1967. It's a state RSA 36A that we operate under. We have the charge of, and basic charge of monitoring, protecting the town resources, natural resources, and balancing those against some of the outdoor activities that we all enjoy. We've got quite a few parcels here in town. Some of the major ones, Horse Hill, Greater Woods, and Wildcat Falls all have separate subcommittees that operate a lot of the day-to-day operations in those areas. And they report up through the Concom, and then we support them for projects and any other work. We have a new parcel that we chartered the subcommittee for, the Fields Farm parcel off Amherst Road. That subcommittee is looking for support, which, and by members I mean that. And it's not a parcel that's really active yet. We're working with DPW and some in the Sorlac group to figure out what we can do on that parcel to make it a little bit more active, more accessible to folks. There's a good idea for canoe launch down there, It's right on the Sauhegan River, so we're looking forward to getting that going. Along that same line, we have the new parcel at Scalara Waterfront, which adjoins town land, the boat landing down on the Merrimack River. That also will be a new subcommittee, probably starting next year, and we'll be looking for volunteers to join that. We have, just a quick aside here too, is we had 3 members of the Horse Hill Subcommittee in about the last 12, 16 months have retired. Long-term folks that have been on that subcommittee since the beginning of that parcel in 2002 when it became Horse Hill. Roland Roberge, Deb Huffman, and Newt Coriel have all have since retired. They're still around. We still see them regularly, but we just want to point out and give them props. I mean, that's over 15 years that they've been dedicated to that property. So their vision and their work has been greatly appreciated by anyone who's had a chance to walk on that property. So we don't, our year-to-year work doesn't really change that much. We do a lot of work with scouts. Both this year was great because we had the Girl Scouts for the first time come up and start looking for projects to do. Normally they a lot of times felt they've been relegated to bake sales and stuff like that, so it was nice to have them come through this year. They retreaded a bunch of bridges for us. They're working now on a project in Horse Hill to create some walking sticks for folks just to go out there, and because there's some trails in there that are relatively flat, but still we have a lot of different people out there walking on different abilities. So walking sticks have always been a nice addition. We've been asked about them a couple times, so that's an interesting project that they're going to take on and see if they can figure out a way to have a return kiosk out there for sticks. So that's going to be nice. We're doing one of the big projects we started this year is the Chapter 111 update. The conservation properties are, the work that we do, we feel it does do a good job of drawing people into the parcels, but when you draw people into the parcels now, we end up with the need for some more regulation. The 111 update is going to be helpful, we feel, very much for the police, especially because right now there's no real town code as to what is permissible in these parcels. So if we have a problem, it's really nothing more than, hey, don't do that anymore. And there's no teeth, there's nothing behind it. So the 111 code update, we feel, is going to be it's going to take a lot of work. There's a lot of parcels. Each parcel has its own deed, so we've got quite a bit of research to do to make sure we're staying within the boundaries of the deeds. But we feel it's going to be a very great boon for us and for the police to work on those parcels. A couple of the other things we normally do this year marks the 18th seedling giveaway we had down at Courier Orchards. It's getting popular, which is good. We purchased about 400 trees. We had 12 left over this year, and we start normally at 9. We had people knocking on the door at 8:30. And as you know, at Courier, that orchard's never been locked, so they're knocking on the open door. Yeah, come on in. We're here. So that went very well. We were pretty much cleaned out by about 12 o'clock. So the people showing up late in the day were like, "Well, just a couple little 13 bushes left. Have at it." But so that was good. We're looking next year. We're thinking of maybe upping the quantity of trees a little bit, just because of the popularity. But that's something we have to discuss still. So we'll see. A couple interesting things that are going on. Obviously, we had some power line hardening project that went on this year. And nobody can forget the pipeline, so every time there's an Eversource truck anywhere near the woods, we get phone calls and complaints and all sorts of things. So we ended up, it started almost 2 years ago, doing some planning work with them, when they were going to be here, what they were going to be doing, and how they were going to be doing it. The work went off this summer, and it's for the most part done. They made a rather large road in through Horse Hill along the power lines, and it was deemed at the time, because of the size of it, we're going to do more damage taking it out, and we're trying to return that parcel to regular ground. They agreed to put a gate on it, so if you go down the Natticook Road, you'll see that large gate there, and that's you know, that's a power line activity. They can get out to those power lines and do services now, and it's, if you go out there now in the summer, it's amazing the amount of animals that are on it. So when we first cut in Greater Woods, everyone thought we were the bane of their existence. We'd done awful things to the forest. You go out there now, that road is 13 feet wide, and you can't walk through it without, getting brushed on either side of your face. And it's regularly the place when in the wintertime, you'll see animals walking the road, walking the trails. So that kind of activity in through the woods is very, very well received. Yes.
I have a silly question. You say you walk along the trail and you're being brushed against your face.
Yeah.
Is that tree limbs or animals?
Tree limbs, yes. We have a couple of volunteers that, that road's, the Greater Road, Gateway Trail, which is the main trail through Greater Woods, is a fire road. And it was put in and made to support emergency equipment. We cut it about every other year now, and this was this summer. We did not cut it. It's amazing. I mean, I was on the Concom when we first cut that parcel in. That was 2 years after middle school, and it was raw up there. I mean, there was a lot of slash. There was a lot of what looked like destruction. It's not there anymore. So, if you get a chance to walk up there and see, get pictures of what it used to look and what it looks like now, it's quite different.
Yeah.
But no. We are funded primarily through the land use change tax. We have a small budget that comes from the town for our business projects, printing, offsets, and education, things like that. But primarily, we're funded from the LUCT funds, which is when the properties go from current use back into a developable parcel. That one-time tax assessment comes to us when our funds are under $1 million. The other times it comes to you guys when it's over. Right now, the three funds that we manage, this Fund 51 is a special conservation fund, which is the one that's funded by the town. That's sitting at $44,000. The Land Use Change Tax Fund, which is our primary fund that we use for purchasing parcels, funding events, that's at $740,000. And the Horse Hill Fund, which was created back when Horse Hill first became its own parcel, and people wanted to donate directly to that parcel without having to go through the gift, that's setting at $571. So that's about all I got to tell you.
Excellent. Thank you, Gage. I do remember the cutting you did down near the middle school,
Yeah.
and I remember what it looked like.
Yeah, people hated us.
Yeah, but I also know that fields in town when I was younger are just full forest now, so it does go pretty quickly.
Yeah, and
It was a long time ago. Those are redwoods now there. But does anybody have any questions for Gage? No? See none. Well, thanks, Gage. We appreciate everything you guys do because it's a great committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gage.
All righty. Next item, number 2 under appointments, is the Public Health Network Services Coordinator, Patty Crooker, is here to present the council with the Greater Nashua Public Health Network's current programs and initiatives. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having us out.
Thank you for being here.
So my name is Patty Crooker. I work with the Division of Public Health and Community Services in Nashua, and I am the Public Health Network Coordinator. So our Public Health Network includes the City of Nashua and 12 surrounding towns, of which Merrimack is a part. The information that I provided was a brief overview of some of our programs that I wanted to make sure we updated you about. I haven't been out here in a bit, so wanted to touch base. So all of our network partners we refer to as our Public Health Advisory Council. We look to those organizations to help us as we develop different initiatives and priorities that are health-related within the communities. And of that, we have an executive committee that's made up of different stakeholders, and those really are decision-level folks in their organizations that can help us not only brainstorm ideas, but implement ideas and provide data and information. I'm happy to say that the representation has always been strong for Merrimack. Both Chief Courier and former Chief Doyle were members of the executive committee. Chief Roy is now a member of the executive committee, as well as representatives from the school board have historically been on. So it's been nice to have some input from great partner organizations. The main programs underneath the Public Health Network, the longest running one is our Public Health Emergency Preparedness Program. So any of you who recall doing some of our mass clinics during H1N1 perchance at the middle school, that is part of our Public Health Emergency Preparedness Program. We're tasked with trying to develop plans to be able to support our communities and the residents during any mass public health emergency. Those plans specifically are dealing with distribution of medication or vaccine, as we did during H1N1. So Merrimack Middle School is one of the pod sites within our region. There are 8 across the whole region. The goal of the program, as far as the prophylaxis or the medical countermeasures, is to be able to prophylax 100% of our population in a 48-hour time frame. So that's 206,000 people. And we have plans in place. It's great because Merrimack was able to get a lot of support from school staff as well as community members to help us achieve that successful clinic here. So that was wonderful. We also have a substance misuse prevention program, which is called Beyond Influence. There's information attached to your packet that was sent out. They work closely with the local prevention coalitions, so that would be Safeguard here in Merrimack, and have been ongoing members of that meeting since 2013 when we took over that program. It formerly had been through a separate grant RFP at the state level. We have done a number of events in coordination with them, and we also now have a substance use disorder continuum of care program, which I am also the coordinator of due to some funding cuts at the state level. So we meet with what we term the Mayor's Opioid Task Force in Nashua to be able to come up with initiatives to address substance use within the region. And that includes all the municipalities. This specific work group was begun by Mayor Donchis when he took office. But we work closely with the Beyond Influence leadership team, and myself and Lisa Vasquez, our prevention coordinator, sit on both, so we make sure that there's a lot of the same people at the tables. This year starting last year, we do have a new program, which is called a Young Adult Leadership Program. We've historically had a real focus on providing suicide prevention education within the region. And we use the NAMI New Hampshire Connect program in order to achieve that. It was decided upon by our Public Health Advisory Council member organizations that we wanted to have one program that we really promoted, so it was consistent throughout the region. We've held those trainings specifically for folks in public safety and emergency departments. We've also held them for mental health counselors and school counselors. And now this program is targeted at the age group of 18 to 24-year-olds. And it's a train-the-trainer program, so they can come get training and then be able to provide this training to their peers. And that was based upon some information at the state level where they interviewed a number of young adults, 18 to 24-year-olds. I like to say it's a little higher than that, but they won't let other people attend if they're over 25. So they said that one of the things that might help them better receive the information is if it was provided by someone in their age range. So we did our first training last year and had 9 folks go through it, and we will be holding another training this year. Not sure where within the region. We can look at, because it's 18 and up, we can look at holding it for high school students or college students, or one of my focuses would be to hold it for working young adults that are within our communities, because I think they might have reach into some areas that we don't necessarily get to. If they're not in school, they're not in college. Sometimes it's hard to reach folks. One of the other big projects that we take on is our community health assessment. So our most recent community health assessment was published in 2017. I do have a copy of it here for you. This is another project that is really advised by our executive committee of the Public Health Advisory Council. So they're kept up to date as we go through the whole process. What data do we want to look at? What health issues do we want to look at? This is our third community health assessment. This really allows partners within the organization and anybody really within the region or elsewhere to access data specific to our public health region and be able to use it not only to inform their organizations themselves and the community, but also when organizations are applying for grant funding or trying to validate the outcomes of any initiatives that they're doing, they can look at some of the trends over the years. Our first, like I said, was in 2011. So we have seen some change between 2011 and 2017 in some of the indicators. And the final piece I wanted to mention was our community health improvement plan. So after we do our community health assessment, we look at that data and we determine what are the priority health issues within the region that we want to focus on for the next 3-year cycle. We then develop goals and objectives for each and activities under each to be able to meet those goals and objectives. The most recent plan was dated 2015 to 18. And it included priority areas of chronic disease, which was heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and obesity, access to health care, emergency preparedness, behavioral health, which included substance misuse, suicide, and mental illness. So it's now time, since we did the community health assessment last year, to do our new community health improvement plan. And many of the topics, the health priority areas, are the same. There is a new priority area of maternal and child health, which will be interesting because it's sort of starting off on a new ground. We do put questions and feelers out there to see where within that area people want to focus on. And a lot of it will be on education for healthy behaviors for people that are pregnant, as well as information about children's health and development, being able to teach parents and caregivers how the children are developing and what needs they might have, making people a little bit more aware of what they can provide to help nurture those kids and maybe know when something may need to be addressed if they're not meeting certain milestones. We also have separated the chronic disease program or priority into the chronic disease with heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and now instead of obesity being in there, we have weight management, physical activity, and nutrition. Really looking at the positive aspects of health issues, and instead of, say, trying to reduce the number of obese individuals within the region, which was one of our previous outcomes that we were hoping for, we want to increase the healthy weight of individuals. So it not only addresses people that are overweight or obese, but also people that are underweight. And really looking at physical activity along with weight management and nutrition and having that whole holistic approach. So, copies of both of these, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them to the best of my ability.
Anybody have any questions? Patty? Barbara?
Hi.
Hi.
Question for you. For the community health assessment, do you share the results of that with area physicians?
We do. We decided on doing it in a 3-year cycle because the hospitals, in order to meet an IRS requirement, have to do community benefits assessments every 3 years. So in having our advisory board, or executive committee as it's now called, we contribute all to that same assessment. So instead of the United Way doing one and the hospitals doing one. So then the hospitals are able to then disseminate it and have it available to their providers. It's also, we also have providers that are on some of our work groups for the different initiatives. And I go out and speak to all different groups about it, from the different town councils or boards of selectmen to the Rotaries and so forth.
And for the assessment, do you also include items that have come up that may be hot topics, such as the report a couple of months ago about the increase in pediatric cancer rates? Sorry, I can't talk tonight.
We do have a chapter in our community health assessment on cancer, as it is the leading causes of death in the state of New Hampshire. It was published in September of 2017, and we try to limit, although it's grown every year that we've done it, the number of chapters and pages that we have included. But we do include different topics. Last year, we had a special grant that was through the state, but it was CDC funded. It was a CDC Brace initiative on climate change and health. and we subcontracted with the Regional Planning Commission on getting that assessment done, and people have been very pleased with the results of the assessment. It's included as a chapter within our community health assessment, so it's distributed that way as well as independently. But we do try to come up with new topics that we haven't covered before, to be able to get a baseline. There's gonna be chapters that you don't see a huge change in the data in just a
Right.
3-year basis, so sometimes we try to rotate one, like environmental health was included in 2011 and 2017, so there may be some changes that are more evident over that extra 3-year period.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Very
Barbara.
welcome.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much for your presentation. I really appreciate it, and I got a chance to review the materials, and, you know, the GNPHN really does a lot of good work, Patty, and I appreciate what you and the folks there do day in, day out for people in the region. The 3 questions that I have is knowing that line, and it's just a curiosity question, knowing that Line Borough and Wilton and Mason are on the western periphery of the network, how much of a difficulty is there for people in the rural parts of your network being able to obtain access to the specific services that you offer?
The services that we offer as a network, there's not difficulty for them to access. Really, it's just a matter of getting in touch with us. And a lot of the services tend to be around training, education. We did do a lot of education during the Ebola issue in 2014. And one of those, it made me think of it because it was at the Montessori School up in Wilton. We tend to have close contacts at a number of different organizations in each town, but may not have many outward-facing public events that take place. We can provide guidance from, I'm also the point of contact for Narcan distribution and training within the region, so there's a number of organizations in every town that have contacted us and that we keep in touch with and do trainings, whether it's for the community or their staff. So if people are interested in different programs that we have, it's easy for them to set something up. The issue is the capacity of that town or organization in order to be able to embrace or take on an initiative that we might help them lead. So sometimes that, I think, is a barrier.
Okay.
Or if
Yeah.
it's an issue that they think they might not be as pertinent in their town, which is very common with substance abuse.
Since you brought up the line of substance abuse, one of the things that I notice is missing, and I don't know if it's something that you work on specifically, but I know Harbor Homes has been trying to get programs involved for people that are in recovery, pairing them with a mentor that have, obviously, they've beaten addiction, they've developed a certain skill set that they want to share with new people that are in recovery from whatever particular addiction that they have. And I'm just, is that going to be a focal point at some particular point for the network to not just deal with the prevention piece, which you're very strong in, but actually get into the whole recovery piece? Because, you know, one of the things that I've read and learned about about the addiction crisis in general is that it's one thing to get an addict, you know, into a program. It's one thing to get them to treatment, but once they get out, you know, all the support and the service that they had on the front end, if you don't have a family member or a good close friend that's willing to help you along, and outside of, you know, Al-Anon or not, you know, Narcanon or what have you being there, that they tend to be rudderless. So I'm just curious to know where the network stands on the recovery piece.
Absolutely. And that was one of the reasons that the state had implemented us providing a substance use continuum of care position to be able to facilitate the linkages between prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery programs. So not only were we trying to increase our awareness of the programs that were going on, increase their awareness of each other and ability to work together to ensure that there was a warm handoff for folks from one step to the next, as well as to try to identify gaps in our region. One of the things we do focus on is a lot of education about stigma and trying to, as a community, or teach our community to not judge people because of issues that they have. If somebody has diabetes or somebody has cancer, you get a different approach than if somebody has substance use disorder. People thinking that maybe it was more of a choice than getting one of these other chronic illnesses. So that's one approach that we take, but we also do work closely with a number of peer recovery organizations. There are a lot of them, not a lot more than there used to be, though, within our region, and we do work closely with them.
There's one in Hudson, I'm drawing a total blank, it's.
Riverbend?
Not Riverbend,
River-
it's like Hope for,
Hope, well, in Manchester, they have Hope for New Hampshire Recovery, but there is,
maybe it is Riverbend, it's, the facility's down along the river.
yeah, they have a methadone clinic, but they also have
Yeah.
a peer recovery component as well.
Yeah.
Yep, so they are close partners with us as well.
Yeah, former, old high school classmate of mine is very active with
Oh,
that
yeah.
organization there, so that's
We
why I asked.
actually go out and do trainings too for the folks that utilize the recovery organizations. So not only trainings, but we go out and get information from folks to say, hey, what do you think would be a better idea on how we can approach people, or what can we provide that's not within the community that we haven't thought of? You know, trying to look towards the experts in that area, because they're the people living with these issues, you know, as to how we can help them. We also have a Community Connections Guide to Recovery. So it is about a 30 or 40-page document, and you know, of course, we publish it and it's out of date. You find a typo or a number wrong. So we maintain it online. So we, instead of printing out a lot of copies of it, we printed out these cards, and I can give you guys a couple of them. It lists not only emergency services that are available, but also regular health-related services, not specific to substance use. And then it lists prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery resources, as well as providing some important side information and data along with it to sort of make a whole picture.
And then the last question, I know you have an emergency preparedness component. Do you coordinate, and this is kind of a soft spot for me, do you coordinate with, you know, area animal control groups so that in the case of a crisis, that there are resources available for people and their pets? It wasn't reflected in your.
Nope, absolutely fine. I know I try not to put too much information on any specific program, but we do.
Okay.
We actually did co-located shelter planning. I've been there about 10 years, a little over, and starting in 2009, we started doing some co-located shelter planning, so there would be a pet shelter there as well. And we work with not only some veterinarians, but also the Disaster Animal Response Team of New Hampshire. And we're fortunate in that the Division of Public Health in Nashua also oversees the city's contract with the Humane Society. So
Perfect.
have some leverage in being able to include that in their contract language.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question of Eileen? Do we have their website link on our website, the merrimacknh.gov?
Not to my knowledge.
Is that something we could consider adding so it's an additional resource for people in town?
Certainly, we'll talk about
We
it.
can check for sure.
Okay, great. Patty, thank you again for coming.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill. Peter?
Patty, just real fast, did I heard you correctly that the Merrimack Middle School is one of your pre-planned emergency operations centers?
Our point of dispensing, so a mass clinic location.
Okay. And I'm just curious about that. Is that, God forbid, but in a public health crisis or something, that would just be for vaccinating, or would it be, they'd set up temporary medical services, or kind of almost like a field hospital?
Vaccinating only.
Vaccinating
Yep.
only?
Vaccinating or providing antibiotics or prophylaxis. There are plans for what's called an acute care center.
Yeah.
And that's really a low acuity service for one specific issue. So if it was an influenza, we provide oxygen, maybe some IV antibiotics, nothing higher than that, just to take the surge off the hospitals. The two sites identified for those are both at the Nashua High Schools.
All right, I'm glad to hear, though, Merrimack is a location that you've worked with the police and fire chief. Thank you.
Yep. We also have in Manchester, Merrimack, I should mention, one of our neighborhood emergency help centers. It's really a long acronym, as New Hampshire likes to do, for a triage center, is located in Merrimack at the Southern Immediate Care Facility. So it would be a place where folks can go to get triaged and see if they were ill, worried well, getting them off again their primary doctors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Does anybody have anything further? See nothing. Patty, thank you very, very much.
Thank
You're
you,
very
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you for having me.
While they're doing that, what I'd like to do is, let's see, Rohan, wait a minute. I gotta get my glasses. Srinivasan, is he here this evening? No, okay. then we'll just continue on. That's it, yeah, no. All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, the council to hold a public hearing to gauge customer satisfaction with Comcast's traditional cable television service. This hearing is part of an ongoing cable television franchise renewal negotiations relative only to traditional cable television and does not include internet or phone services. And Nick, were you going to be kicking this off for us?
Just to recap, we were here about 2 weeks ago. I gave a presentation, which was an overview of our current franchise agreement. Right now, we have one cable provider in town, which is Comcast, and that's who the franchise agreement is with. Brian Christensen from Comcast is here tonight just to listen to any public comment that we may have, not necessarily to speak on behalf of the company, but just to listen and see who's here to voice any sort of concern or issues or include comment on everything else that we had gone over just 2 weeks ago. Our franchise agreement expires this January, and as you mentioned in the introduction, this is relative only to traditional cable television services and does not include the internet or phone services that Comcast provides.
Great, thank you, Nick.
I just also
Sure.
want to preface this by saying that we've had our inbox open to public comment as well, and we received one email this evening at 6:47 p.m. And I also spoke to Noah Mindell, who is a resident that spoke during the public comment 2 weeks ago. I had a good phone conversation with him this afternoon. So,
Okay, great. And then I do have a piece of correspondence from Chris Christensen, and he apparently would like it read into the record, which I will do real quick here. Dear Town Council, I will be unable to attend the public hearing scheduled for September 27th. I write to the expectation that my thoughts and concerns will be part of the public hearing record. In previous franchise agreements, the town required the vendor to maintain an office in Merrimack. This requirement has ceased, and the nearest office is in Londonderry. And I urge the council to consider reinstating the local office requirement. Comcast has advised me that certain services can be best performed at their office in Londonderry. This would include exchanging a remote controller or a DVR. When I called Comcast for service, I routinely get delayed because they have an incorrect identification information. They refuse to correct it by phone, requiring that I must come to the office and do this transaction in person. For equipment exchanges, they can send a service technician. We all know the difficulties of scheduling and waiting for a service technician. Londonderry is a long drive and inexpensive if you have to hire a taxi, as I would often do. It is certainly not conducive to combining with other errands which can be accomplished in Merrimack. Thank you for your consideration and your efforts on the behalf of Merrimack residents. Chris Christensen. I haven't yet. I was getting ready to. I didn't know if the council.
Reading that into the record, so I didn't know whether it was part of the.
I apologize. I did do that backwards.
I didn't say a word, because I was the worst.
Yeah, sorry about that, Tom. Well, actually, since I did that backwards, does the council have anything any comments or questions they'd like? Peter?
While the gentleman's here from Comcast, and he's looking for comments, again, I'm gonna kind of quote off of the bullet points that we were given here from the cable TV department, and, and I don't know if you got a copy of it, sir? Okay, maybe he can get a copy of that? That expresses our,
Brian's in the back.
all right, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong guy. No wonder why you're not acknowledging me. Did you get a copy of that, though? I didn't see.
Brian Christensen, Comcast, Government Relations. I don't think I have an official copy of your information. I got a summary from Nick, and Nick and I have had a few
Yeah,
conversations.
just the additional, what Nick is titled, the additional items to consider in the renewal franchise. If, Nick, you can give him that, I'm not gonna sit here and read them all.
Sure.
That would be my commentary. These are the things that we found were important to us, and that we'd like Comcast to know, at least that's my
Well,
opinion.
after the public hearing and as we continue this process, that will surely happen. So I appreciate that, Peter.
No, thank you.
All right, because I did it backwards, I will now open the public hearing at 7:58. And I've read in Chris Christensen's letter, if anybody would like to address the council on the upcoming franchise agreement, if you would like to step to this microphone here or take the table with Nick, whichever you're comfortable with. And I would like you to state your name and address if you could as well.
Kurt Cusick, 647 email tonight. That was me.
Thank you, Kurt.
Could I go on the record as saying I did read his email, and it's fantastic. He makes a couple great points in the email, and I wish I had gotten it earlier today. But I'm also hoping to talk to Kurt at the end of the meeting as well.
Sure, yeah. So I am a resident here of Merrimack, been here for nearly a decade. I'm a systems and networks engineer by trade, and I work from home 100% for my primary income. Enthusiastic about telecom and big media consumer myself, so I have a direct vested stake in the future of the town development agreements with Comcast. I understand there are many federal, local regulations that can supersede or invalidate some level, but I kind of did my best due diligence I could since I found out about this meeting. Not a lawyer, but I can speak at least technology. So I have a number of concerns and questions. One, has the town reviewed bordering town franchise agreements and future agreements for when the dates are coming up to see we can have collaborative bargaining power?
Actually, we've just begun this process, and so we've heard from Nick 2 weeks ago, and we will be going over that. So your input, and he seems to be excited about it, is what we're here for this evening, and we will likely be doing a lot of what you might be suggesting, I suspect.
All right. So I put in a couple of different bullet points, and this is just a copy of the email I sent it, so you can reference that. There's links, charts, all sorts of stuff people love.
Can the email be forwarded to the council so that,
Sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, if there are links attached, it's better to just forward the email so we have access to the link.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So this year, number of cord cutters in the U.S., consumers who cancel their pay TV service and do not resubscribe, is going to climb 32.8% to 33 million adults. New estimates from a research firm, eMark Deer, compared to 25 million cord cutters, 24.9 million cord cutters at the end of 2017, which is up 43.6% year over year. And papers stick together. So realistically, the dynamics of the market are changing and changing drastically fast. Those statistics also aren't including cord nevers, people who don't decide to sign up for services. So Merrimack needs to act to secure and protect our access services. If these statistics continue at the rates they currently do, then the feasibility of the traditional cable TV model is highly unlikely to survive the 10-year of an agreement that we're proposing. 2017 to 2022 more than doubles the cord cutter percentages. If the trend compounds, that's a 40% cutter rate over the next 10 years. This likely forces Comcast to change their business model by providing IPTV services instead of traditional channel-based offerings before the 10-year time frame. So, IPTV services would be basically providing the same television channels over the internet instead. On demand, something along those lines, Netflix, those are all IPTV services. So we need to make sure that we protect the town to allow fair competition moving forward, and I have a few ideas on ways we can do that in that respect. So one, implementing verbiage that gives negotiating power to the town of Merrimack, given the recent negative direction of federal protections regarding net neutrality and throttling of services such as Netflix and Hulu. This continues to be very important as more people cut the cord at a drastically increased rate. Something that came to mind, again, not a lawyer. Services shall operate in a way that does not impede or degrade competing media content services that share the same physical or virtual infrastructure for the purposes of providing services to residents of the town of Merrimack. Page 15 of the draft, section 4.1 on the franchise agreement. needs to be redefined to update what's included in subscriber network. We might likely look towards our peers and what makes sense. It talks about providing stereo, making sure we include stereo, if just in case it's provided from the broadcaster. It's the same verbiage from 10 years ago and probably from 10 years before that. I think they have stereo. But just defining the services that we want and require. Page 7 on the draft, Section 8 definition should also have the scope broadened. As defined, it's indemnifying Comcast from franchise agreement regulations and limitations impeding IP-provided services as well as competing services over IP network. We need to empower the town against losing its leverage as that transition happens in magnitudes during the extent of the agreement. And the other part on the, see, 4, I have implement verbiage protecting right-of-way access and preventing provider bullying on pole attachments. Example being, new and existing construction of infrastructure shall provide unimpeded shared access for any municipal or competing content services, providing its implementation does not reasonably interfere with the franchisee's ability to provide services as needed and inclusive of existing right-of-way, including conduit and pole attachment rights. The franchisee should be expected to, at reasonable and direct cost, accommodate requests requiring access in a time frame considered appropriate and fair by any persons involved in the request. This requirement supplements but doesn't supersede the FCC pole attachment rules and provisions. Again, it's all in the email, just rough ideas. That gives the municipality of Merrimack or designee that Merrimack sees fit the right and rates of utilization equal to a dedicated cable or telephone provider. And it also grants the town of Merrimack the right to authorize itself or a designee to non-disruptively relocate lines on the poles in the event the franchisee fails to comply within 30 days for the purpose of fair use. So one of the ways that providers such as Comcast have historically tactically prevented competition is to drag their feet on doing things like pole attachments and make it such a bureaucratic process that it becomes so much more expensive. Comcast passes the franchise fee directly from the town to the consumers. I know the most recent meeting had discussions around the number of PEG channels granted and maintained, as well as allocation of the funds and discussion of who's actually watching it. Honestly, those fees are effectively a tax under another name funding the existing 3 channels, and I don't necessarily believe that Merrimack needs to fund 3 public access channels with resident funds. The video equipment quality we use kind of looks like a VHS when you're looking at the channels. It looks terrible. It's antiquated. As an example, the last finale of Dr. House, remember that show 10 years ago, was filmed on Canon EOS DSLRs. They're like regular consumer camera bodies for very low cost in comparison and it looks fantastic compared to some of the stuff that we're broadcasting, and we're talking about HD. So we're behind. The town doesn't supply programming guide data to Rovi, Grace Note, Comcast, whoever it is that's in there. It always just says government access. So if you want the data, you have to go to the Merrimack TV website where all the relevant content is housed. It's also not up to date. There's nothing there. If I look tonight, I saw everything that was going to be broadcast up until yesterday. So I have no idea what's on. I have no idea what's coming up, when to see it, how to see it, and I can't look at my guide data to reflect that either. So what good is it? I have to go to the Merrimack TV website to view the content that tells me how to wait to watch it, or just click the link right there. I can watch it right on the website. So we're not really properly using the channels that we have, and I think that it's a little redundant for us to have 3 channels and fund 3 channels. So, I mean, I agree, we probably should have 1 channel. It makes sense for us to have a channel for some of the more important information that gives us some accessibility to some of our older or technologically less capable residents, but overall, we're not really effectively using what we have there. So, and I understand now the next part is a bit of a tangent, so humor me here, but I would personally far rather see Merrimack take the funding from this and allocate it to a technology infrastructure support fund going towards a Dig Once ordinance implementation like Keene has published recommendations around, and the National Broadband Plan has been published. So effectively, every time we do road work, we dig it up once, we lay down conduit, and then the town lays the conduit for pennies on the dollar, and then we can recoup some of that cost by leasing it fairly to whoever sees fit to put in fiber or whatever they'd like. That reduces the barrier of entry for any competition by 90%. So if anyone else decided that they wanted to come in here, we can do that at the same time for minimal costs on something that we're doing with routine maintenance anyways. So we can lease that to organizations just like the pole space and provide more reliable service. If nothing else, we can sell it to Comcast if they decided they wanted to use it, but it would be underground, not that we have any trees that fall on poles. So that's a whole other subject outside of, and I understand the actual franchise agreement, but we talk about, I know quality was something that was brought up. USA Today has Comcast as one of the 20 most hated companies in America. The American Consumer Satisfaction Index rates Comcast as the lowest satisfaction rate of any television provider. And the Section 13.2 FCC customer service obligations even specified in our franchise agreement says that under normal operating conditions, telephone answer time by a customer representative, including wait time, shall not exceed 30 seconds from when the connection is made, no less than 90% of the time. Has that ever happened to anyone here, ever, once, at any single point in time, ever? So what happens when they don't meet that? If the goalpost moves, what happens if they keep going? And how are we holding anyone accountable there? So I know we could have it worse. We could be restricted to Fairpoint DSL only. We could have no service whatsoever like some of the more rural towns, but that's not us. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't demand excellence for ourselves in Merrimack. I understand Comcast doesn't want to be regulated or want us to place any additional demands, but it's a contract. We could just as well demand a bowl of ice cream for every resident in Merrimack if we saw fit, and so felt the desire to put it there. Not that we should. I like ice cream, but we need to remember this is protecting the town and its people from a company with a long history of abusing its customers, and we need to remember that who we're getting in bed with here, and when we sign these deals, and why we sign a franchise agreement to begin with. So that would be all.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, Kurt.
Could I make a comment? Or?
Sure.
I thought Kurt's email was fantastic, and I'm really hoping to talk to him after this meeting. The first 2/3 of his email and what he brought up relative to cord cutting was something that I had kind of mentioned in the presentation, and I actually included the chart that he has in his email. We didn't meet. We haven't met yet, but he had the same exact chart, some of the same exact verbiage that's in his email was something that I included in the original presentation that I kind of omitted for time. So I'm right on with a lot of the things that Kurt had brought up, and I'm always welcome for constructive criticism. And I just wanted to point out that as far as the quality of our programming, we do have HD cameras in these rooms. We have to downgrade a lot of our programming to SD, and then it outputs to SD on our Comcast channels because we are on the standard definition tier. So that's why a lot of our content doesn't look all that great. And then as far as what we offer online isn't in HD as well because of our workflow. To get those meetings online as quick as we can, we basically put an SD version up on YouTube. We've since made an upgrade over the past month in our control room, so we're going to have high definition content taped in this room on our YouTube channel. And as far as scheduling the channels go, we schedule our channels from Friday morning until Thursday afternoon, so it's on a weekly basis. And one of the points that Kurt brought up with our channels not being on the Comcast guide, that's something that we've always wanted, and in previous years we have tried to push Comcast to include our local programming on the guide that Comcast provides, but it's a struggle for public access centers throughout the state and throughout the country to make that happen. So we try to best utilize our website to post our schedules, and every access center kind of schedules their channels differently. We do it weekly here from Friday to Thursday afternoon. But I'm hoping Kurt sticks around, so after this part of the meeting, we can have a conversation. That'd be great.
Thanks, Nick.
Hopefully, we could even, if you want to have that, write it into the franchisee agreement.
It's maybe a possibility. It's your franchise agreement.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody who would further like to address council on the upcoming franchise agreement? You might either stand here and state your name and address, please.
My name is Stephen Adt. I live on 8 Berry Lane. I've been a resident since 2010. Will actually be 8. Okay. Thanks. I'm a little vertically challenged. All right, thanks. I'll just repeat myself. I'm Stephen Adt. I live on 8 Berry Lane. I've been a resident since 2010. It will be 8 years Monday, to be exact. I'm originally from Londonderry, and I've been familiar with cable franchise agreements. In the past, I actually questioned the town council in 2009 before they approved theirs. So expressing my First Amendment rights to kind of question this process, because the last couple of meetings was kind of a little concerning, the way people were addressing the language and the service. I guess service has been a problem. My family has Comcast cable TV, and we have not had any problems. It's been very reliable. The picture has been fine, except for the PEG channels, but overall it's been pretty reliable. So in any outage, call or whatever, and it's been fine. So maybe we're the exception. I don't know. But I have a couple of questions regarding the specifics of the franchise agreement. In terms of the franchise authority, what is the rationale for the town council to be the franchise authority? Because I would assume it would be the town government, but from what was discussed in the last couple of meetings, it was the town council. So that's my first question.
It is.
We are the government.
The town council is the town government.
Okay.
Okay.
Because that's kind of, all right. How is that? That doesn't make much sense.
So the council is the governing body of the town, and then there are, I work for them, and the staff works for me.
Okay.
And they do the setting of priorities and that kind of thing, and I administer it.
Okay. So in terms of this franchise authority, you guys are responsible for responding to complaints. If somebody had called Comcast and they didn't respond, they're supposed to go to you. Is that correct?
They could, yeah.
Okay. So has there been any complaints to the town council about the service of Comcast over the last calendar year?
Not to me, no.
Okay.
That's been part of the discussion we had, that we've heard some complaints, but it's never been officially through anything. So that's what we had a discussion about, making sure that there was a mechanism whereby the public knew to come to Nick, because he's our representative with the cable. So your point's well taken, but we have talked about it.
So there wasn't a process in place for the last 10 years?
Well, that's not, people weren't familiar with it, let's put it that way.
Okay. So how many complaints would it trigger an investigation? Because that was something that was mentioned in the last meeting or the meeting before, that it would take a couple of complaints for the town council to look into it. So is it kind of like you have to basically react when there's a number of people instead of responding to the individual?
I don't, TV is not one of my primary things in life, so I'm not as concerned about it. I do need internet access That's my big thing. I don't know what internet access costs around around the state, so I don't know if I'm paying too much or not enough. But I think what happens is that when these conversations begin every 10 years, the past 20 or so, that's when conversation gets triggered. In the meantime, I think people who it is important in their life, that's when they become noisy about it. In the meantime, they just are going with the flow because there's no other alternative in many instances that they would be apparently happy with. So I've not had complaints myself, and I don't know that many of us have really had any at all either, but I can't speak for them.
The way that the noise was and the tone of the last couple meetings would imply there would have been people in this room that I would have thought would have filled up. It's kind of disappointing. There has been 2 that spoke so far. I have another question in regards to the Cable TV Advisory Committee. It's, according to your website, it's disbanded. How come that it's classified as disbanded, but yet you have this on your listing as committees?
It was a committee up until probably 4 years ago, maybe. And I think it was utilized pretty much during this type of arrangement when we would be revisiting the franchise agreement.
It was disbanded shortly after the last franchise
That long ago?
agreement was renewed, because the cable advisory, it was an advisory committee, and the town council was still very much the franchising authority. Once the town was working with Comcast, it was night and day compared to the town working with Adelphia. And we've seen so fewer complaints come our way. Council next to none, and myself, I might receive 2 or 3 a year at most, and I often send those complaints immediately straight to Brian Christensen, either via email or via text. Maybe I've had to call him once or twice, and he is very quick to resolve customer complaints. In fact, we usually get a call back from the customer thanking us for reacting quick to that being resolved.
Thanks, Nick.
So I just want to clarify some of the questions. Oh, actually, there's one more question. In terms of the interest for the cable franchise, it was mentioned in one of the meetings. How come that just took them like almost a decade to catch on that there was, I think you were the one that asked it, the interest that would be given to the town from Comcast? How come nobody caught that until now?
I can't speak for past councils. I just, like, and Council Healy, I think, made a comment about it at the last meeting, that I read the agreement, and they said, we would collect the franchise fee every 3 months. I said, why are we collecting it every 3 months? Why aren't we getting it every month? It was kind of that kind of analysis. There wasn't any thought to it, to be honest with you, Stephen. It's just, I read the document, and it struck me odd.
Okay. So I have a couple questions, just general questions, and maybe Brian Christensen should come up to kind of just answer these questions, general questions, just so everyone would be on the same page. Where is the current location of the head end for the cable? Or maybe I can ask Nick.
Are you talking about the public access channels?
Just the cable head end to get all the cable channels.
Merrimack's cable channels?
Yeah.
Merrimack Community Television?
No, not the community television, but just all the.
That's if I'm not mistaken, it's in Londonderry.
Okay, that's what I thought. So what would happen if there wasn't a franchise agreement that was agreed upon by the end of the period? Would that mean that we would be severed off from that head end? And there'd be no cable TV?
There would still be cable TV. I believe the franchise agreement would move forward as month to month, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's written in.
So the customer wouldn't be totally disrupted if there wasn't a formal agreement by the deadline?
No, there wouldn't be a disruption of service.
Okay.
No.
How much is being used for tax, to relief of the property taxes currently with the franchise fees?
This current year, we're using $250,000 of it. We have brought in about $400,000 per year and are using $250,000 to reduce the tax rate.
Okay, because that can, the Comcast of the world kind of doesn't encourage that because it's not being used for what it's intended to be in the moment. I actually disagree with the previous speaker in terms of the PEG funding. I wish it would be funded more and to be maxed at 5%. And I think if you give the town the media services the full max at 5%, you might see a better quality of programming and content. I do, the video quality is poor, and I will also add that I was watching the community access channel over the last couple weeks, and the audio was so compressed, I had to crank up my volume to 50 just to barely hear some of the words. So that was kind of my thing. If you put a commitment into investing in the public access channels, that I think it would provide better quality as well. And also, I really believe in community access media. I think if you were to talk about it 5 years ago, defunding it, that would be a different time. There's been talk about the Hulus, the YouTubes of the world, but for civilian, volunteer, freelance programming, I think there's not going to be that many options in the future on the online world because YouTube, Facebook, and the social media companies are cracking down on what you can or cannot post. And also there's music licensing, which is really ridiculous. So if you have like 45 seconds of music, they'll cut your audio off and stuff like that. So it's making it difficult for the smaller people to have a platform because the YouTubes and the Facebook of the world are trying to find the bigger voice or pick and choose who should be the influencer or what have you. And I think it's going to be incredibly more difficult for the independent, freelance, volunteer types to get their voices heard, so their only option might be considered to be the old-fashioned medium known as cable. So I really would suggest that both the media services and the town council really take that into consideration. And if you do drop the franchise fees to 2 or 1%, it will impact the quality and the staffing and stuff like that. That would just be a strong suggestion. Other than that, I have a couple of questions. Looking at my notes here. In terms of your wish list, in terms that you were proposing for the town council, what other things would you be doing with the funding to upgrade the media services and the community access channels? You didn't specify on what was your wish list when you were going to negotiate with Comcast, so.
Yeah, I mean, as far as how I budget the division, that's something that we'll be talking about over the next couple months. First with the CIP that I'm submitting to Paul on Monday, and then later on November and December, once the council begins their budget process, we talk about equipment, we talk about our upgrades each year. I think that with the franchise agreement happening and with the hope that we do get an HD channel, we are going to we're hoping to spend a significant amount of money in our head end here so that the quality of the programming can increase, so we can have at least one HD channel that where the quality is modern. And I also can't believe I'm saying 1080i high definition is modern in 2018, but that's where we're at in public access. And also, I also think that the quality of our programming online will also change with those upgrades in our head end, because the two things really work together. So, I'd rather talk about the budget process and the workflow of my department during the budget season versus during a franchise agreement comments.
All right, and then just one other thing too that I was watching, when I was watching the bulletin board in between the programming, the bug on the time that's on the lower third of your screen is like 15 minutes ahead of the actual time, and I don't know why that hasn't been caught, but it should be looked into, because 15 minutes ahead of the actual time is a little too much.
I have caught the time slipping a few minutes ahead. In fact, Brian Christensen pointed that out in the lobby tonight. So let the record show that Comcast pointed that out tonight as well. But that time does kind of drift on the bulletin board. It's just something that
I was
happens.
just speaking as a citizen, don't let Comcast. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen.
Is there anybody further who would like to speak to the upcoming franchise agreement? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing at 8:29. All right. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out that the comment period is still open till
Yes, thank you.
October 10th. You can submit your concerns to the town council via Merrimack TV at merrimacknh.gov. You can call the town manager's office at 424-2331. You can send a letter to the town manager's office if you so choose. So once again, the comment period will stay open until October 10th. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody have anything further? No? All right. Nancy?
Just a quick comment. Some really interesting, and I only understood half of it. But the half that I did understand from your presentation, you're going to be talking with him, right?
Absolutely.
And so I'm going to be expecting from you the changes that are reasonable from him to incorporate into the.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
And I just want to say I love the enthusiasm that we've seen from Mr. Mendel at the last meeting,
Yeah.
and he was great to talk to on the phone today. He has the same energy in person as he does on the phone, and I'm looking forward to talking to Kurt and Steve as well.
And the other thing, I think it's intriguing, because we did talk about starting to look at broadband for the town. The having the town as a municipality. So, and you brought that up as well. So I brought that up in the past too. That's something that you'll hear from me. Okay. No, but I think that's something we might start considering about the use of the funds, and how would we strategically do that as the town is. It'd have to be a long-range plan kind of thing, and probably working with a planning board as you're going, all this new development, that would be part of it, but it would be intriguing to, because we've talked about it, but I think we need to get on the stick and start making some plans while we still have money coming in. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Bill, and then
Yeah, just, Kurt, I appreciate your feedback tonight. I look forward to reading the email, but I'm not gonna lie to you. I want to see what Keena's done, because I think it ties into some of my comments I made a couple weeks ago about expanding municipal broadband to people based on, like you talked about, cutting the cord. I think it's important for this community to have choices in terms of what they want to be able to view. And I think if it's simple, like what Councilor Harrington alluded to, changing our laws and putting tools and do I dare say it, rules in place, so that if they're digging up the road to laid conduit, like you said, so that, somewhere down the road, Merrimack can actually be, I hate to use the term, an ISP provider, and allow somebody to buy in so that they're able to, have access to the internet and be able to watch USA on demand or NFL Network on demand and just be happy with that. I think, that would be really exciting, applying some free market principles to our community, which I wholeheartedly support, so.
That's actually,
Even though you were done
Actually-
commenting, you could.
It's fine. When it comes to municipal broadband like that, that's actually
Yeah.
very commonly, or, sorry.
if you can be quick, our
Yeah.
public comment part was over. That's the only
All right.
reason, and Bill kind of led you astray, I think.
I did, I
No,
apologize.
that's okay. And I was just going to say, that's actually a very common pursuit for a lot of areas of America, where they essentially become, you have ISPs come in as last mile provider, so the town can go in, whether we want to run our own service, we run the conduit, we run the fiber, we lease the lines, and then we hire the Comcast, the Fairpoints, the whatevers, and then those are the people we call, and they hook in to the municipal internet. But if you look over in other countries like the UK, they have 20, 30 providers that they can choose from. There's only 2 or 3 back-end companies that do the overhaul on the backside, but you have 20, 30 companies you can deal with to deal with the rules, regulations, payment systems, and so on and so forth.
All right, thanks, Kurt.
Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kurt, thank you again, appreciate it.
All set? All right, Peter, you have anything further? You good? All right, thanks, Nick, and thank you for the input this evening. And Brian, thank you for being here. Next item on the agenda, updates from our legislative delegation. Seeing no one here, town manager's report.
The Public Works and Parks and Recreation Departments will be meeting with abutters to Watson Park to discuss the proposed improvements to the park, including the volleyball courts and the skating rink, to seek their feedback on the proposal. The meeting will be held on Thursday, October 4th at 6:30 p.m. in the Memorial Conference Room at Town Hall. The public is welcome to attend. So again, this is to discuss the proposed skating rink and volleyball court setup that we're talking about in Watson Park, moving that skating rink, and getting feedback from the abutters. So again, that's Thursday, October 4th at 6:30 p.m. in the Memorial Conference Room at Town Hall. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Peter?
Eileen, I'm just curious why this wasn't on, like, something like this wasn't on the Parks and Rec. It wouldn't be at a Parks and Rec meeting or anything.
Actually, I think we've actually spoken about what we would like to see down there. And the reason I think that didn't happen is because we wanted, I did, and I think we had that conversation, we wanted the local community around the park, to hear what was going on and what we had planned.
And I agree with that, but this isn't a Parks and Rec meeting though, correct? Okay, so I guess-
No, it isn't. It's basically to talk about the town council's initiative to move the skating rink there and to put in a volleyball court, where it will be located, lighting and that kind of thing, mostly relative to the abutters.
Okay, I guess I know how invested the Parks and Rec Committee has been in Watson Park, and I'm just a little bit surprised that it wasn't it didn't go on the agenda of the Parks and Rec, to have the same hearing, but at a Parks and Rec meeting. I guess it's a public meeting, so they're entitled to go, so.
Oh, of course, everybody's invited to.
Yeah, I know, okay, thank you.
Did Parks and Recreation have a conversation about the ice rink being over here and so on?
I'm constantly being asked, and I know that they spent a lot of time in the issues like the fence, and, they discussed recommendations that they asked me to bring forward on where they thought the courts should be, and everything like that. So they've been involved in it, and they've been very interested in it, so.
Okay, yeah, because I wouldn't want to leave them out of the loop for sure. So I think that's the reason that it's going here, is because we wanted those neighbors to have, to see what the plan was and how we wanted to handle it and so on. So I think that's what it is, but Eileen?
I think it was one of those things that we realized that we've got to get moving on this, and we want to make sure that we meet our deadlines, and the thought was that maybe somebody from Parks and Rec and Paul would go over and speak to the abutters, and then we thought it'd just be easier to just have a meeting, so no one was meant to be left out or anything.
Yeah, I don't think that, okay.
Yeah, it was just more just to, I think everything's kind of all been set as far as what you want, what the feedback that you've already received, and this is just basically the discussion around that. It's not to move it or to anything, but talk about specific issues that people might have that are abutters, that, having to do with the direction of the lighting and things like that.
Gotcha.
So
Okay, thank you.
please invite everyone.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Next item, consent agenda. Consideration, final reading of consideration changes to Chapter A 198, the Administrative Code.
Move the consent agenda.
Motion by Counselor Boyd.
Second.
Seconded by Tom. I didn't hear, it echoed differently out of my head, sorry about that. By Tom Koenig. All those in favor of moving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. 700. Item 1, under old business. Rotary Club of Merrimack is requesting the use of Watson Park for their annual Christmas tree sale. And Bill, did Bill have to leave?
He wrote me a little note here. He had a prior engagement. He asked if you would just table this to the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the Rotary Club request for using Watson Park for the annual sale be moved to the October 11th, 2018 Town Council meeting.
Second.
A motion by Counselor Boyd to table this item, second by Barb Healy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 700, table till October 11th. Thanks, Bill. Council to consider the acceptance and expenditure of a donation in the amount of $278.30 from Boy Scout Rowan I don't know why I have a difficult time with his last name, Srinivasan. I believe you're right, to the Parks and Rec Department for future use for Wasserman Park pursuant to RSA 31:95B and Charter Article 8, Section 15.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Counsel Boyd, seconded by Pete Albert. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, speaking very briefly, could we please send a letter to Rohan thanking him for the donation and keep us updated when he actually has his Eagle Court of Honor?
Yes, we can
That's
do
not
that.
too much trouble.
Not very good. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 700. Item number, excuse me, 3 under new business. The council to consider the Oh, we did. Item number 4. Oh, gosh. Council to consider reappointing the Maureen Hall as the Merrimack Senior Citizens Club representative to the Parks and Recreation Committee pursuant to Charter Article 6, Section 1.
Move approval.
Motion by Council Boyd, seconded by Barbara. Any further discussion on your motion?
Just want to thank Ms. Hall for participating on Parks and Rec. They're doing some good things there, and certainly hope that she becomes a valued member of the committee.
And she's been doing it for a little bit now.
Good.
3 years anyhow, I'd say. Yeah. Peter?
I just want to follow up. Maureen does a great job. She represents the seniors well, and I got to tell you, she leads that group, and they do a whole bunch of interesting trips. And if you ever see, she's full of energy, and she's great on the committee. Thank you, Maureen.
Yep, absolutely. All right, see no further comment. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 700. Next item on the agenda. The council to consider proclamation, excuse me, designating September as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month to promote awareness of suicide prevention resources available to our community and to learn how to help prevent suicide. We were approached by, bear with me here. Received correspondence from Joel Frieders of the United City in Yorkville, Illinois. He'd lost some friends to suicide and decided he wanted to take the initiative. He couldn't do much, to help out and do what he could for people locally, so he decided he wanted to try and make this a national movement. And he'd asked different councils across the country if they would be interested in participating in this. And so I thought it might be a nice idea, and I was looking for your support in this. Peter?
And I'm glad this is forward. I support this proclamation, and as I read it, I looked at it, and after 32 years of law enforcement in this community, like every other community in this country, Merrimack is touched by this problem. I mean, it's sad, but it's a fact of life. Unfortunately, I noticed it mentions in here the National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, which we heard Patty Crooker talk about tonight. And I know that they do a great job assisting the police department. So there's a lot of good things in this proclamation. I support it.
Thank you. Peter, Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to dovetail off of Counselor Albert, it's suicide's personal to me, having lost not one but two friends who have taken their life a long time ago. And as we've been counselors here, we've also been exposed to certain things that have happened to our community regarding people taking their life. And I think I had spoken during council's comments a couple of months ago, advocating for people in our community that, you know, there are resources here for people to call, to reach out if they're not thinking straight, if they're not feeling right. So I think this is a great idea, and I think we should be doing this proclamation to further solidify our commitment to making sure people in our community are not just taking care of themselves physically, but also mentally, knowing that we have their support and that there are resources available to them. So I do support the proclamation. Thank you.
Okay. Should this be moved and then read into the record, or? What do you read it first? I have the final copy. Yeah.
How come we didn't get a copy of that?
The real copy, I'm not sure. We do have a copy, but it's,
We have the Yorkville proclamation, which is useless to us.
sure. Barbara?
It is the end of the month.
I was just going to say that, October.
So can we, move it forward instead of it being September,
Make
have
it
it be
October.
Well, no, I have it right here.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
no, we're all good with it. We just
Oh,
didn't
okay.
get the final copy.
That's
We
all I
didn't-
have, the
No,
sample. Okay, okay.
And this, well, I was fixing it
Okay.
myself in my agenda packet, not realizing that I had a copy right here. So I will, if you'll bear with me, I'll read it. Town of Merrimack Town Council Proclamation, National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, September 2018. Whereas September is known in the United States as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month with the intention to help promote awareness, and whereas suicidal thoughts can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, religion, or background, and whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in America, claiming the lives of nearly 45,000 people each year, and whereas the town of Merrimack is no different than any other community in the country, but chooses to publicly state and place our full support behind local educators, mental health professionals, athletic coaches, PAC leaders, police officers, and parents, and as partners in supporting our community. And whereas organizations like National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and the National Alliance on Mental Illness are on the front lines of a battle that many still refuse to discuss in public, as suicide and mental illness remain too taboo a topic to discuss in public. And whereas every member of our community should understand that throughout life struggles, we all need the occasional reminder that we are all silently fighting our own battles. And whereas we encourage all residents to take the time to inquire about the well-being of their family, friends, and neighbors, and to genuinely convey their appreciation for their existence by any gesture they deem appropriate. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Town Council of the Town of Merrimack, hereby proclaim September as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in the Town of Merrimack, dated this 27th day of September 2018. So, no.
Move approval.
Motion by Councilor Koenig, seconded by Tom Thornton. Thank you very much. All those in favor of the proclamation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Thank you very much. Here we go. All right, next item on the agenda, minutes from September 13th.
Mr. Chairman, I move the town council meeting minutes of Thursday, September 13, 2018, with the following changes. Page 3, line 28. We were talking about PFAS, we were talking about the upcoming October 10th meeting that DES is going to have. The sentence reads, "Once the date is set, he or Councilor Boyd will extend the formal invitation." I don't know who he is, and I certainly didn't think I would be extending the formal invitation. I thought it would be either coming through the chair or from Eileen, or it would be coming directly from Assistant Commissioner Clark Frizzy. So I don't know how the sentence should read, but I don't think it would, it was not me extending the invitation.
Paul, you gonna take care of that?
If you look, start on line 26 at the end, Counselor Albert noted, the commission has expressed interest in being involved with the wish to bring their staff in on it as well. And the commission is MVD.
Right, that's correct.
Once the date is set, he, meaning Counselor Albert, or yourself, Bill, will extend the formal invitation to the commission.
Well, I didn't think either of us were gonna do that, but that's fine. I'll give him a call. I know, that's what I'm saying, but I'm just saying is, I don't think either of us would have made the outreach to MVD. I think that would have came from, I don't
remember. Yeah, okay. Very good.
Moving on. On page 7, line 26, the sentence reads, Representative Barry stated Senator Daniels, this is the first time that Senator Daniels' name has appeared in the minutes, so can it read that Representative Barry stated Merrimack State Senator Gary Daniels passed the bill so that it's clear? Please. On line 11, excuse me, page 11, line 17. The sentence reads, she has acquired one from Camp Young Judea. Judea is spelt wrong, it's Judea. Same page, line 27. The sentence reads, if able to get off the EPA impaired water list, that is one less thing the community has to be concerned with as it relates to the MS4 permit. Can we clean up that so that it reads, if the lake is to get off the EPA impaired list, comma, then comma, just so that it reads like a sentence and not colloquial. And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Nancy?
On page 3, line 14.
Mike? Tom?
Sorry.
You get down on the job. Page 3, line 14. Councilor Harrington stated she would strongly encourage that. We have to finish that thought. Councilor Harrington stated that she would strongly encourage delay of the New Hampshire NHDES meeting. She remarked that, and that the rest will be continued. So take out that and add in delay of the NHDES meeting. And I just want to make a point that at the school committee meeting, I did pretty well taking care of my own mic, don't you think?
Yes, you
Did. Had nothing to do with the notes, I just want to say that.
Barbara?
Okay.
Yeah, still on page 3, and this is line
Mike? Mike?
18, strike the word
No,
being.
Mike? Need your mic?
Pete,
Pete, wake up.
Am I gonna have to start?
Yeah. It's because I have my glasses on. Okay. Okay, so line 18, strike the word being. Again, it's just so that it reads better. And so it should be on the pilot system for scrubber for the smokestacks to remove PFAS, add to remove PFAS. So, 3 years from now, we're not wondering what we were removing.
All right. Anything further? Tom?
Excuse me. On page 5, under appointments, there's the title here for number 1, the annual review of the Conservation Commission. It doesn't say that it's postponed or tabled, and it looks like we had a discussion, but there was nothing there. So we ought to at least add a line that says, in the previous page, Chairman Rothaus at the top of page 3 has stated that it was postponed. You said this evening, Paul, that it was tabled, so we probably ought to say we tabled it. But I don't know who moved it or anything like that. Just,
Yeah, fix it out
technically,
where it's supposed to be.
it's not there. And then, got it? Okay. On page 9, another typo, line 40, says the House and Senator overturned the veto. It was the House and Senate, not a senator that did it. I think that was all I found. Thank you.
I have to find the page because I didn't mark it down, but I saw one for, it said 45,000, I think it was supposed to be 450,000, and then comments, let me see. I apologize. Okay, Steve, on line 44, page 18, Brulette, because I know him, is supposed to be spelled Brouillette. And then, I'm gonna try and quickly find the last one. All right, I'm gonna have to not worry about it, maybe. Oh, no, it's, okay, I think I'm good. It was speaking to the, what we would use to offset the, to use out of the unrestricted, the unreserved fund balance. Brouillette. Anyhow, I thought I'd seen that as 45,000 as opposed to 450. So, yeah, but it's, I don't know where I saw it now, so we're good. If there's nothing further, did we have a second on those minutes?
No, there's no second.
Second.
Seconded by Barbara. Motion by Council Boyd, seconded by Barbara. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. 700. Comments from the press? Comments from the public? Nope. Comments from the council?
Yeah, just very quickly, Sunday, October 7th is going to be the Michael Laverme 5K. On Sunday, October 7th at 12 noon at Merrimack High School. Patriots have the Thursday night game, so there's no excuse for people can't get out, support a good cause, get some exercise, and have a bite to eat after the race. All the proceeds benefit the Michael Laverme Scholarship, which targets students that are looking to get into technology-based education. So I hope to see members of the community there. I certainly will be in attendance. So that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody further? I just have one. Oh, Peter.
I just want to wish luck to Assistant Fire Chief Brian Borneman. They had a little going away for him last Friday.
Yeah, I missed that.
I unfortunately missed that I was working. I worked with Brian many years. He's a pro. He was a great guy to have in an emergency situation. And he's a great guy to work with between police and fire. I think he's going to be missed, and good luck, Brian, and enjoy life with you and your family.
Thanks, Peter.
Just to let you know, I did go out, I had a hot dog for two of you. And
Thank
he's
you, Ned.
retiring, just like, but he's doing another job. He's going to another job, so.
So you had 2 hot dogs?
Yeah, I had 2 hot dogs. I did, for the 2 of them.
Thank you.
It was a nice gathering. It was a good.
Very good. And the only thing I want to touch on is the MYA's celebrating their 50th anniversary, and they're now looking for volunteers to join a committee they want to do a big fundraiser to get a fund together to help offset costs to participate with the MYA for needier kids who might not be able to otherwise participate. So I don't remember Brian's email address, but on the town website there is a link to make that contact if you're interested in participating. Yes, oh, absolutely.
One other thing, Friday night, Merrimack versus BG. If you're going to attend the game, they're doing a food collection to benefit the food bank. So there's going to be a number of folks that I work with at Meals on Wheels, include myself, and we'll be there gathering food to fill up the food banks for the winter and everything. So if you go, bring some food and make a donation.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you. All right, see nothing further.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilman Boyd.
Second.
Seconded by Tom Thornton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. 700. Thank you very much.